15-year-old Ileana Hernandez is under pressure.
So I can't show you your classroom.
Not just academically, as she adjusts to remote learning during the pandemic, but also in simple, ordinary moments, as her respiratory system works overtime for the next breath.
I feel like there's somebody sitting on my chest.
That's what asthma does to you.
When's the last time you had an asthma attack?
I was trying to go to sleep, and I felt like I couldn't breathe at one point, and my mom, she was laying on the sofa, so I had gotten up, and I had woken her up because she was sleeping. I was like, I couldn't breathe, and she had to call the ambulance. And they came and they picked me up and they took me to the hospital.
Here in the South Bronx, Ileana is not alone. Gina, her mother, is well aware that is not a coincidence.
You can notice the difference, the thickness of the air. I mean, I travel to Brooklyn, I go to Queens sometimes, and the air mass feels very different. It doesn't feel as stuffy, and it's a different odor, everything.
Health experts have long attributed increased health issues in the South Bronx to the effects of environmental racism, defined as the intentional racial discrimination in infrastructural and environmental policymaking, specifically the planned and deliberate targeting of Black and brown communities in deciding where to place roadways, toxic waste facilities, along with the industrial and commercial sites like bus depots and tractor-trailer distribution centers. Dr. Robert Bullard, distinguished professor at Texas Southern University, is widely recognized as the father of environmental justice.
And it doesn't take rocket science to figure out you're going to get how high levels of asthma, respiratory illnesses, disease, diabetes. You start naming the illnesses that can be traced back to an environmental exposure, and you could understand that this whole idea of environmental racism is not something made up by some radical sociologist. It's real.
New York City Department of Education statistics show child asthma emergency room visits in the Hunts Point section are nearly twice what they are citywide. In the neighborhood of Mott Haven, where Ileana and Gina live, it's triple the citywide rate. Why? If you take out your phone, find the South Bronx in your Maps app, a search for transfer station produces markers for almost a dozen facilities. Urban planning projects, led several decades ago by the late master planner Robert Moses, ultimately encircled the South Bronx inside a ring of major highways: the Cross Bronx Expressway to the north, the Major Deegan Expressway to the west, and the Sheridan Expressway to the east. The result? Residents who are forced to live in, around, and under a haze of transportation-generated air pollution. Michael Johnson, co-founder of South Bronx Unite, says those decades-old decisions continue to put his neighbors at a dangerous health disadvantage during the coronavirus pandemic.
These pre-existing conditions have been caused because of the top-down planning, has made our community more susceptible to getting high rates of COVID and high rates of COVID fatality. Our children deserve the same type of air quality they do in more economically affluent white communities in this city.
We think this is time for something to change.
Julie Tai, president of the New York League of Conservation Voters, says a push for clean energy trucking is a solid start.
I think the state of New York has passed a law, the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, that requires a look not only at what we can do to reduce emissions, but also at how we can make sure we're getting at pollutants, making sure we're tracking them, and making investments in those underserved and overburdened with pollution communities to help counter those years of environmental racism that occurred.
Like right now, I can barely breathe as I'm talking to you.
Reducing air pollution rates in Ileana Hernandez's South Bronx neighborhood is a matter of life and death. For her mother, Gina, it amounts to managing a situation which, frankly, is out of her control.
It's hard to see a child do that, you can't help it.
All right, and Jay Dow joins us live tonight. And I'm just curious, having watched that piece, is there a way to undo some of the damage that's been done?
Well, Corey, absolutely. Clean energy efficiency is the #1 priority here. 2020 vehicle pollution is the #1 enemy. We just met Ileana and Gina by chance, just walking down the street. I already knew that so many young people here has asthma, and I just walked up to them and asked them if they knew anyone, and sure enough, Gina says, yes, my daughter does. Clean energy proposals making vehicles clean. We're here in the hub, one of the heart areas of the South Bronx, and that's exactly what you see just standing here on the sidewalk, how many trucks go by just in an hour.
All right, Jay, thank you so much for that. Wow.
All right, well, we have heard about urban planner Robert Moses and how he displaced and discriminated against minorities, keeping black families out of Levittown and Stuyvesant Town.
Yeah, in the South Bronx, his tactics were a little bit more subtle, allowing black residents to live in the neighborhood, but putting their health at risk by building a car-centric neighborhood that caused higher pollution risks, all of which were based on race and class.